What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And well, if you see on YouTube, I'm not in any of the usual places. Coming at you today from Indianapolis, Indiana, because I'm going to Fever Aces tonight, and we're going on Friday too. And we decided to take a trip, and the boss said that's fine as long as you still do the show. And so thus, I'm in a hotel room in Indianapolis, Indiana, doing the old radio show. Happy to do it, though. Happy to be here on a day where we hear Dan Quinn's first Wednesday press conference of the season. And the super producer, Anthony Haney, has informed me it was quite the long one. It was, Anthony, you said that DQ spoke for about 30 minutes today?
Yeah, it was 26 minutes, 38 seconds to be exact.
But who's counting?
Giving you guys a heads up of what to look forward to if you actually go listen to the presser.
Yeah, but see, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to listen to 26 minutes. What did you say, 26 minutes, 38 seconds?
Yes, sir.
I've been in a lot of Wednesday pressers. That's a long Wednesday presser. Yeah, you don't have to listen to all that. We're going to give you the best stuff because not only did Dan Quinn speak today, Jaden Daniels spoke today, and we actually think that he had perhaps some more interesting things to say. So I want to start with Jaden and kind of, we obviously did our film review yesterday on Take Command, and we also did it, we let you hear some of it here on the show, and all of that is fine and dandy. But what did he learn when he watched the film? Because there's been a talking point that, basically Jaden needs to, it's unsustainable, right? The offense, you can't possibly... You can't possibly run Jaden Daniels this much. How could you? It's irresponsible, the play calling. Is Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn going to get Jaden Daniels killed? And I don't think that's an accurate reflection of how the game was actually called. With that said, it is certainly how it played out, where he was running far more than anybody anticipated, than they want. And so if that's the case, what responsibility do they have to kind of blend, let's call it, the reality of how these games might play out as he's early on in his progression and learning to read defenses and, is told, hey, get through your progressions quickly, and he understands what that means, and knowing that when he gets to the end of possible throws, he's going to run. Okay, well, if we know that's going to happen a number of times per game, do we then have a responsibility to, say, throw more screens or just run the football and maybe take some of the read option stuff and just make it a straight handoff and live with the possibility that we're giving up a chance at a big play if he pulls it and runs, but that's one less hit that we know he's not going to take. But it starts with understanding where Jaden is in his progression. So here's Daniels today when John Keim asked him, what did you actually see when you watched the tape?
Yeah, I could grow in every aspect of my game. Obviously, like I said, after the game, I graded myself hard. We didn't get the win, so, it's kind of like, all right, we go back and watch the film. You watch the tape, it's never as good as you thought it was and never as bad as you thought it was. So you just move on. You learn from those lessons that you learned on tape. Take the coaching, you move on to the next week.
It's funny to hear him say that. It's never as good as you think it was. It never is as bad as you thought it was. And I think that can probably actually be applied as someone who's now watched a fair amount of tape in his media career. It's so funny to me how when you watch tape, all 22 around the league, the margins of how good and bad teams are shrink real big. And everyone fits in a pretty narrow window of good and bad. It's just that the margins in this league are so small, and you really come to appreciate it that, it really is a couple of plays here, a couple of plays there. And that can be both, hey, I had a really great game. Oh, wow, I maybe got lucky on a couple of plays. It's not quite as good as I thought. And it could have maybe even been better. No quarterback has ever played a perfect game. You could say on a bad game, oh, man, it's just, I know better. It's not that bad. We're fine, or I got unlucky, or they got us, but we know how to plan for it next time. It never winds up being as bad after you watch the tape. But also sometimes within a game, you're like, oh, man, I really goofed up that play. And you go back and watch it, and you're like, no, they just got us there. Or you're like, that was I made the right play, and then you notice another guy that was open, or something you didn't see pre-snap, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I should have read the other side of the field, and if I had done that, I would have had a touchdown. So I think that idea that Jaden's talking about, that's going to be a learning process for him as a young player, for as mature and as advanced as he is, he still has played one NFL football game. And so it is both a, hey, like some of this game was not as good as I thought, some of this game was not as bad as I thought, but it's also something that week over week is going to be interesting to follow. Of course, it all gets reduced into this, I don't want to call it a narrative, but like this talking point, this thing that gets discussed of, is he running too much? Is this sustainable? And again, I would tell you based off the actual film, he shouldn't have run that much. That was not a design. That was like a bug, not a feature. Yes, they ran him some intentionally, and I think there's a couple of those design runs later in the game where I'm like, hey, you're probably not winning here. Let's just avoid him taking some hits. But by and large, they did not run him a grotesque amount on purpose, and there are plenty of plays where he should have very easily had other options to not run. And I will also say he did a fairly good job of like getting down and getting out of bounds too. It's not like he ran it 16 times and took 16 hits, and the biggest hit he took was in the pocket when Cornelius Lucas got beat the one like really bad snap that he had and got blasted from the blind side, fumbled, and thankfully Tyler Biotish fell on the football. But Scott Abraham from ABC7 asked him, like, what do you think about that balance of running too much, so to speak, that has become the talking point around the Commanders this week?
Jaden, this week a lot has been made of your 16 rushing attempts in your first game. The processing there, it's so quick, obviously, during the middle of the game. What are you seeing when you think of, like, okay, I got to tuck it and run? Well, like, what are you looking for to make you want to, I got to use my legs here?
I'll just say based off the situation. Obviously, that's like situational things. You kind of just go from there. I can't really tell. It's like a instinctual thing, feel thing. Like, hey, the time is up. Obviously, you don't want to get hit by 300-pound plus people. So, it's kind of just like that's kind of growing up my whole life, man. It's like just an instinct. Like that clock in your head is like, all right, it's time to go.
I think it is a perfectly reasonable answer. And I think it's one that also is going to evolve over time because having the clock is good. We've seen quarterbacks who don't have the clock. We saw last year a quarterback whose clock was not exactly finely tuned, right? Sam Howell stood in the pocket too long. He didn't have a great feel of when it was time to go because Sam had really great escapability and he had the ability to throw on the run and like do all these things. But sometimes he just stood there too long. Or sometimes he would actually invite pressure by stepping the wrong way or not taking a drop back at the right angle, a.k.a. most of the time in drop back passing, straight back behind the center. He'd fade to one side or the other, and that would cause issues with the protection. And so with Jaden having that pocket feel, understanding where the middle of the pocket is, and ultimately that clock being finely tuned is a positive quality. The question that is going to remain for him and that should evolve, or the answer to this question should evolve over time, starting this week against the Giants, is what happens when that clock goes off. Do you run, or do you bow out, extend the play, keep your eyes upfield? Because there's, sometimes it was the right decision to get out of the pocket, but it wasn't necessarily the right decision to take off and run. Like the first scramble of the game, one, if he just backpedals a little bit, he probably can find Terry McLaurin on a crosser. That's one after watching it again and again, talking with Logan about it, rewatching it, etc. I initially had that down as a good scramble. I don't think it's a bad scramble because there's pressure pretty quickly, but it's not an optimal scramble. And when he gets out of the pocket, he has, I think it's Austin Eckler right in front of him. Just throw the ball to Eckler. You don't need to run it. Just get the ball to Eckler and let him try to make the play. It's 3rd and 21. You don't need to take a chance there with you running the football. And I think on that one he winds up running out of bounds, but I think he takes a shot as he does. So ultimately, if I have the details of that, whatever. But the concept is when you get out of the pocket, what happens? Is it 1, 2, 3, even you get through the progression and run? Or is it, let me extend the play and see if I can find something big down the field, which is something that we saw him do quite a bit in camp. But the game that we saw on Sunday against Tampa was far more reminiscent of a lot of the stuff we saw on tape at LSU. So can he become the guy that he was in camp, or become the guy he was in camp when the lights are on for real Sunday at, I can't believe I'm saying this, Northwest Field. Yes, that's what it's called now. Don't forget, it's not FedEx anymore. It's not Commanders Field. Northwest Field against the Giants on Sunday. When we get back on the Hoffman Show, more from Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn as both of them spoke today. And then coming up at 4:30, a deeper dive into the tape on the defensive side of the ball. We'll take some of what Logan said on Take Command and flush it out in terms of what we need to see moving forward, because while all we want to talk about all year long is Jaden Daniels, the bigger issue in the context of the game on Sunday was that defense gave up 37 points. Why? And does it actually fit into a larger trend that we saw around the NFL? We'll discuss as we go in hour number 1 of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So, got you some, news of the day from Jaden Daniels. I don't know if we call it news of the day. What do we call that, Anthony? Sound-aided analysis. We let people hear from Jaden Daniels. I said stuff that hopefully made sense, that framed the main talking point in command land right now. Sound. It's not soundproofed. sound enhanced analysis?
I don't have the correct name for it, but I think whatever you come up with, I think is
You're just
appropriate.
co-signing. You're like, whatever, bro. It sounds good to me. Okay, great, excellent. Thanks for your help, Anthony. Anthony's doing so much right now that people should understand. There's a lot happening behind the scenes of the show today, and Anthony is making stuff happen, earning his paycheck. Which like sometimes that it'd be like that. Not the life. I mean, I guess we all deserve. I don't want to get too far into this. The point is that there actually is news and notes from the day, sound wise, and we are going to get to those now as Dan Quinn spoke for nearly 30 minutes on his first, Wednesday press conference. I guess second because last week, but first one after a game. So Wednesday's this weird day as someone who used to be a beat reporter because you have all this stuff that you want to ask from the weekend. You've had a chance to watch the tape, which is not the case the last time you talked to the coach, although that might change a little bit more this year. This is like a low-key thing to watch with the NFL Pro stuff. Now that most of the people that like actually watch film will have watched it by Monday because it's available at 6 a.m. versus the rest of us waiting on Game Pass for it to publish at noon on Tuesday if we were lucky and it was on time. I do wonder if the Monday pressers get a little better because there's just stuff that you can see on tape that the coaches would have seen that we would then ask on Wednesday. And it's funny because by Wednesday, the coaches are all like full steam ahead. Like, hey, no, I'm focused on, Dan Quinn hit you with it. I'm focused on New York right now. We're not looking back. Dan doesn't really seem like that stylistically, but Jay would do that. Ron would do that. And that's not shots at those dudes because a lot of coaches around the league, the old Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati, doing that bit. But like by Wednesday, they're ready to focus on the next one. They've done their game review. They've flushed it. They've had to tell the truth Monday. But it is a chance to kind of ask, hey, what happened on this, with this player? Did you get medical stuff back? What now, hey, this player that didn't play on Sunday, what is it? So it's kind of this cool, not cool, but it's this pivot day in terms of the press conferences and all that stuff. So a couple of big things that Dan Quinn got asked about today. Let's start off with Emmanuel Forbes. He left the game on Sunday. That is indisputable. That much we know. The last play he played, he picked up a double penalty. It was a pass interference and a face mask, and he didn't see the field again. However, there was also rumblings that there was an injury situation with that it wasn't just for performance. Noah Igbenogany had been in and out of the lineup prior to that and then permanently replaced Forbes after that play. So, Dan Quinn, answer the question, sir. What the heck happened with Emmanuel Forbes on Sunday, and what can we say about him moving forward?
Yeah, he banged up his wrist, and so he'll have a splint on that today. We got good news; it's not going to knock him out, but he is going to, wear a splint on that wrist to help protect that today, and we'll work it through the week. And like Emmanuel, like a number of the guys, man, like we're working really hard to develop him. Would he want some plays back? You bet. But I'd also say like this is a young player that we're developing and working with him, and so he's improving and going to improve. So that's where we're at on that, John.
I think the hard thing with Forbes is going to be, like, how much are you working to develop him on the field and how much are you working to develop him in practice because you can't live with what he's giving you on the field. And if he's going to play like he did on Sunday, I don't know that Dan Quinn's going to live with that because I don't think that he competed at the level that Dan expects. But the problem is the drop-off. Like, one, Benjamin St. Juste is already playing out of position as a number one corner. And we've known that for a long time. And I actually genuinely feel bad for Benjamin because he's a good corner who is a fine number two. You're not like, oh, heck yeah, Benjamin St. Juste is our number two corner. But if Benjamin St. Juste is definitively your number two corner, you're like, we can live with this. We can have him be out there competing and we'll do, what we need to do help-wise. And if we need to shadow a number one with a legit number one corner, that's fine. So if, say, I don't know, they had drafted Christian Gonzalez last year like the whole world wanted them to instead of Emmanuel Forbes, the guy that they drafted, the Benjamin St. Juste discussion is different. When you make a little tiny mistake against Mike Evans, the results are different than, even Jalen McMillan. Who obviously got the Commanders a couple times on Sunday, but as a rookie, receiver and a third guy, like he got coverage bust benefits. He's not up there ripping balls away and focusing through good coverage where hands in the way of the catch in the same way that Mike Evans was, and that's unfortunately been the story of Benjamin St. Juste last couple of years. So you're already playing St. Juste out of position as a CB1 instead of CB2, if you will. Then you have the reality that Igbenogany is, while he competes his face-off, is worse, or did not have as good of a camp in terms of consistency of high-level play that even Forbes did, and Michael Davis was below both those dudes, and that's the dude you signed in free agency. So I don't know what the plan is there, especially if Emmanuel's hurt. I almost am like, give him a week off, although if you're going to have him face the Giants, like, do you want him coming back against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? I don't know. Their schedule is a nightmare at the wide receiver position, or for their corners, because they're playing such great wide receivers. But that is where we stand on this Wednesday. We'll obviously see what happens with Emmanuel on Friday. It sounds like he's going to play, but what's that rotation like? That we probably won't know until Sunday. What would help Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St. Juste and Noah Igbenogany and the entire secondary is more pass rush. So are they going to get that from the inside with the re-addition of Johnny Newton? What is the status of the Commanders' second-round pick? Here's DQ.
When you're coming back from this, you may see him out today, but that's to set up for tomorrow. So we pushed it hard with him, conditioning that yesterday, hold today, but we wanted the padded day for him till tomorrow. And then so we're trending in the right way, much like we were talking about with Noah. We'll kind of have a better sense for when we get to Friday, but he's definitely trending in the right spot. So we're close for sure. And but I'll trust my eyes and make sure he's going through all the whole process to get ready. But he's definitely pushing it hard to get into this mix.
I mean, that would be nice. I think most people were on Sunday going, who is number 64? And that is not an ideal place to be in week 1 of an NFL season, is figuring out, is that who? Huh? I don't know that player, especially if you paid attention, especially if, say, you cover the team. Because that was me going, wait, who's 64? Sheldon Day. They signed him to the practice squad, after cuts. And he was the guy they brought up. So definitely much more ideal once they can get Johnny Newton out there. And hopefully can immediately step in and play at a decently high level, certainly higher than what they're getting. It does make you kind of, I don't want to say scratch your head or second guess. I wonder if they wish they had held on to John Ridgeway a little longer. Probably not, because they're not short-terming anything. And I actually approve of that for whatever my approval is worth, which is, I mean, you're listening to the show, so it's worth something. But at the end of the day, Big Phil's going to have to continue to step up. They're going to have to get more pass rush and finish from John and Duran. And then obviously, hopefully, these outside guys can play better when they're not having to pass rush against Tristan Wirfs, who might be the best left tackle not named Trent Williams in all of football. Last but not least, wide receiver position was definitely a stunner on Sunday when the inactive list came out. And it's like, oh, Noah Brown's not playing at all. He's inactive. How is the acclimation process going for him? And can we expect to see him as soon as this Sunday?
Where do you kind of see him fitting in now that you've seen sort of the other pieces from one game? How do you kind of see him fitting in moving forward?
Yeah, we really see that trending in the right way. And so Noah worked really hard to kind of, offense, you can imagine all the system to get down to go, but he's worked really hard to that. So, we're definitely trending in the right space for him to get up and be ready. So he's definitely chomping at the bit and was certainly wanting to last week as well. But best thing, let's make sure we continue that. But, yeah, he's really trending in the right direction on that then.
And it's important to remember for Brown, not only is he acclimating to the playbook and all that kind of stuff, he also is coming off an injury. So to me, that answer sounds like some of this is much more injury-related than it is, he doesn't know the playbook yet because he just got here, et cetera, et cetera. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And on Wednesdays, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the analysis that Logan Paulsen gives us in Take Command, and we're going to talk about it because Logan obviously is great at breaking down the tape and really narrowing in on what's important and what's not, and trying to fit that advanced analysis of a guy who played 10 years in the NFL because he was so smart. And where does that fit in kind of the larger narratives of the team? That is what we're going to do Wednesdays at 4:30s, and we're going to give it our first shot next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5 o'clock today, not my beat, as usual, but we got a new guy from the beat. Not a new guy. You guys have heard him on the radio station before. I just don't think that we've had him on the show, which is totally my miss. He does a really good job. He's been dedicated to this for a long time, and I'm happy to welcome him into our rotation. David Harrison, Sports Illustrated, is going to join us. I know he spends the time grinding the tape. He asks good questions at press conferences. He's around. He's developed relationships over the years because he's been doing it now for quite a few. So I'm excited to welcome David on the show. We're going to do that at 5 o'clock. 5:30 today, I'm probably, if I'm being honest, with all due respect to David, much more excited about this, Anthony, because it is our second competition Wednesday. And Anthony, that means you are going to have to spin the wheel of punishment. Although today is going to be, oh wow, that is a big wheel. I now see the wheel of punishment is empty, but I have an alternate method. We will get the official wheel going next week because we'll obviously. I guess we're revealing right now. I won. I don't think, considering what people know about our various picks from the weekend, I don't think it's surprising to people that I won the first competition Wednesday. Don't roll your eyes at me. You picked the games. You didn't have to pick poorly. And then we're going to spin a wheel. But between me being in Indianapolis and thus I cannot spin the wheel as the victor to pick your punishment, and the fact that we just got the wheel today and haven't had time to load it up with the punishments yet, I have an alternate method that I'm going to employ, as long as the other person that I need to do it agrees to be helpful.
We might not need the alternate method because Matt Essick might help me out with the wheel.
Oh.
Yes, I already know how to set it up. I just have to cut the actual things out. So
you just have to do a small arts and crafts.
We're gonna be good.
But you gave it the arts and crafts project to Matt Essick.
Not necessarily. He's doing is printing out the words for me, and then I'm gonna do the actual crafting.
Okay.
You'll see.
I'm kind of surprised. I thought Matt Essick would be like, I would love to do an arts and crafts project.
So he actually he proposed some new punishments.
I get veto power over them at least starting next week. But if you approve of them, they can go on the board for this week because you're the only one that's going to have to suffer them.
Yeah, I definitely approve one of them. One of them. Do you want to know now?
No, we can have people stay tuned till 5:30.
All right, that's a bet.
But yeah, that's coming up at 5:30 is Competition Wednesday. Because that's what they do in Ashburn, Competition Wednesdays. Let's certainly hope that Competition Wednesday this week leads to a better outcome than it did over the weekend in Tampa. And so what we're going to do on Wednesday is take a little bit of Take Command's analysis, because Tuesday we record our tape pod, and then we share with you on the radio at 5:30 the Jaden Daniel Tape Tuesday Take Command breakdown, right? Then whatever we think is the most interesting thing, not from that, we're going to discuss amongst ourselves on Wednesday. So it's Wednesday. It's 4:30. It's time to get into it. And what we thought was most interesting is talking about the defense, because we spend so much time talking about Jaden Daniels and the offense because it's Jaden Daniels, and that makes a lot of sense because he's the future of the franchise. But obviously, the defense can go a long way to supporting Jaden Daniels. And with that, we thought it would be interesting to get Logan's analysis of what he thought went wrong on Sunday. And so there's three main things that I think come together. Let's start off with just the kind of big picture. What did Logan have to say about the defense's performance overall?
I mean, first, you don't need to be a 10-year NFL player to see that, but that's ultimately what it comes down to. What did Jay Gruden say to you? Sometimes you just got to make plays. They're in a good spot, to make a play. I think I don't remember the exact number, but it's 4 or 5 opportunities for sacks, in second and long or third and long situations or third medium situations. And the rush pattern's good. You're there. Let's just finish that sucker. So kudos to Baker. You got to give him credit. I mean, he played about as good at football games you could have played. But I think that's something that is important, right? It's like it comes down to making plays at some point. And I know this is like not the most detailed, but like the X's and O's got you there. And I know it's going to be tough, but we got to finish some of those. And think about if you end up with 4 more sacks there in this game, like
Huge.
on third downs, like or second and longs, and it's 2nd and 15. Like the defensive performance is significantly better.
And to be honest, like sometimes it's right. Jay used to say that all the time. I think he might have said it on Russell's show, earlier this week. Like, Dan calls it finish. Jay would be like, "Oh, you got to go make a play." Whatever your version is, like sometimes you're in good position. You do the right stuff. And to be honest, Anthony, this is something that I don't think fans are going to be very excited to hear me say. And frankly, I am not super excited for me to say it, but that might be a reality this year. This is what happens when you have a talent deficiency. Like, you got a bunch of guys that can follow instructions but aren't good enough to actually make the plays. And while I don't think that is going to happen to the extreme it happened on Sunday for a couple of reasons that we will get into, it is a reality that we have to deal with that, like, there might just be some days this year where you get plays made on you by receivers over these DBs, where the pass rush doesn't get home because your edge players are only so good. And that is an unfortunate reality of being in year one in a rebuild where you spent your first-round pick on a quarterback and, you don't get that impact player otherwise in the first round that's super ready to play. The second-round pick is hurt but worth it in the long term. They obviously think your young DB and Sainer still is going to take some time to he's going to make some plays, but he's also going to miss some. And the other thing that I think is kind of emerged as a theme around the NFL this weekend is teams that have continuity succeeded. And they had a deeper understanding of what they needed to do, and they were battle-tested and fire-tested in a way that a team like the Commanders, with all this new personnel, more new personnel than any other team in the league, and a new coaching staff. All these players have not played for these coaches before, with rare exception. And even in those exceptions, it's been a while. Like, Eric Cliff's last year in Arizona was 2021, and Zach Ertz played for him then. Bobby Wagner's played for DQ, but it's Joe Witt's defense, and that was a long time ago. So unless you're like Dorrance Armstrong in this defense last year, there just isn't a lot of continuity. Meanwhile, Baker, when it comes to talking about making plays, like Baker and Mike Evans been playing together for a couple years. Mike Evans was gone from Tampa. They put out a statement last year that this will be my last year in Tampa, whatever. And then they had an awesome season. They re-signed Baker, and Mike's like, actually, I think I'll stay. I think I like it here. Chris Godwin, same thing in terms of continuity. And Baker has run this system from Liam Cohen before with the Rams in 2022, and there's a lot of carryover from the stuff that they did last year. And with that, you kind of think as a defense, you might have a beat on some of that, but the offense is already one step ahead, which gets to Logan's next point, which is a lot of the stuff that the Bucs did in week one is not what you would have expected the Bucs to do in week one.
Overall, I think I just wanted to say this after watching the film. First off, Liam Cohen was like in his bag, man. They did a lot of stuff offensively that I was like, how are you supposed to fit this having not scouted it? Like, how are we supposed to fit this run? Like, so that's one thing is like they ran a ton of traps. They ran a ton of whams. So basically like on the interior, like a trap is when like you have a 3 technique. So someone lined up over the outside shoulder of the guard. He's penetrating that B gap, and you're pulling the backside guard to kick him out. And of the things on my bingo card that I would prep for, outside zone, duo, power, counter, were the 4 things that I kind of said we got to prep for this based on what Sean does in LA. That's where Liam Cohen was last. Trap and wham were not very high on my list. And so you're asking guys to fit a bunch of runs that are not like normal runs you fit consistently. Like obviously Philly made that kind of in vogue like probably 4 years ago. And so you prepped it when you played Philly, but you don't prep it versus everybody else because not everybody runs it. So that was one thing that stuck out to me. The motions and the shifts that at the line of scrimmage stuff I thought was excellent by Tampa Bay, which puts them in a tough spot.
And that's smart offensive coordinating. You know, when you're a defensive coordinator, and especially in week one or even every week in, week out, like your time is precious. These reps are precious. And so you want to prep the stuff and spend time on the stuff that you think the other team's going to run. And they got this week on that front because based off of all available data and information, that wasn't what you would expect a Liam Cohen, the Bucs OC, his offense to do. And they did a good job of being a step ahead, something they could do because they had the continuity to build on some of the base stuff that they already had in and take advantage of what, you know, the Commanders want to ultimately be. They'll be more prepped for it moving forward because you got to understand, hey, if this is how we're going to go, this is the counterpunch. Okay, well, let's be ready for the counterpunch. But a lot of that motion shift and some of that stuff Logan talks about at the end there also messed up the DBs, where they did a good job of making the Commanders' defensive backs make decisions. And because they don't have one, they're young players, and two, they don't have the experience together, which, again, like if you want to criticize, hey, you should have played them more in the preseason, et cetera, I think that's totally fair. But you have this young defensive backfield that's got to communicate on some complex route concepts. And we all know it didn't go great. Here's Paulsen one more time.
There were times where they were just not on the same page in the back end, like from a leverage standpoint. And this is something that London Fletcher talked about. You know, I'm on the sideline during the game. I hear the DB coach, you know, giving those guys a talking to, not about making plays, but just about being in the right leverages oftentimes. And that just wasn't that was a consistent issue that they were having. And so I think much like we talked about some of Jaden's maturation on offense and the offense in general just kind of growing into itself, I think there's a lot of that happening on defense with the secondary in terms of where they need to be forcing people to their help. I am really glad to hear the coaches coaching that, because that's something that was not a thing prior to this. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't a point of emphasis. So they understand the limitations of the defense. The coach understands the limitations of the defense, where the help is. It's just about getting guys familiar. And I think, again, this was a tough week one matchup because they do a lot offensively, and you didn't get to scout it. So I understand this was going to be tough. But I do think that was one thing that I took away is like just the attention to detail that the staff expects and the players expect from themselves wasn't where it needed to be, and obviously there was some big plays as a result of it.
And I think that's the difference, right? Moving forward, it's not just, oh, hey, that was bad, we gotta fix it. It's like, no, we already know what the fix is. Like, we gotta implement it. How do we get it through to the guys? And that is a step ahead of where they were in previous seasons with the previous regime. And so I know, like, I am not here to tell you, and nobody should try to tell you, that the defensive performance on Sunday was not reminiscent of what we've seen in years past. And in that way, oh my God, how frustrating. Really, all this new stuff, and they played basically the exact same. What I would say is I have a lot more faith in this staff to fix it. And they probably knew some of the stuff that was happening in real time, and there's just not a whole lot they could do, which might ultimately wind up, if they can't fix it in fairly short order, a reflection of the players' ability to fix it, to process the information they need of like, oh, these two players are going to make us make a decision. Let's make sure we communicate who takes who, and you don't have Jalen McMillan burst open because Quan Martin and Mike Sanders still latch on to the same dude and then leave him running wide open. So the fixes exist. They have to implement them, and it should be a lot easier on Sunday for a lot of reasons, including Daniel Jones being the trigger man for the Giants, although we all know, just so I don't jinx it, Daniel Jones has turned into some form of Tom Brady every time he sees burgundy and gold. All right, when we get back, Anthony's art project. No, really. Anthony, we're going to do the art project next. told you to extend the commercial break.
I was trying, but we already came back.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right.
But-
What have we done this segment, Anthony?
I was basically about to run down the list of punishments that we agreed on last week. Before I added them to the board, and then also share a couple of suggestions from Matthew Essick.
Okay, I think this is a good plan.
Okay. Also, Craig, you'd be proud of me because I took over the show and I did a good job, I think.
Maybe we have to take this off the potential punishment board because that is, making Anthony do like at least half a segment was something that we were considering.
All right. So we had lunch, of course. That was easy.
Yeah, that's easy. Just the loser buys winner lunch. If they want to buy themselves lunch too, they can.
We had 100 push-ups.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm in this shirt of mine. I don't know if I could bust out.
Yeah. Why are you all dressed up today?
Today was picture day at my middle school, so I'm all dapper Dan. I had the blue blazer. I got the gray pants. I got the loafers on. I got the dress socks. You can't put on dress shoes with white socks. That's all I'm saying.
No.
Obviously. So we got 100 push-ups, a fantasy football sub.
Yeah. So that one is winner gets to make a sub on the loser's fantasy team, and no, not a trade, just a 1 week. I'm benching your best player because you should have picked the games better.
Yeah. The fourth one was an ice bath. I think Rachel came up with this one.
Yeah, Rachel submitted ice bath. That was a great one.
Great
we
one.
We need to come up with the ramification. Is it 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes? It's a long.
Yeah,
I think the weekly one we can keep it to 3 minutes.
Okay, that's cool. And then here comes Matthew Essick. So
I'm terrified of these because he is a twisted man.
A costume show.
Oh, you just have to do the show in a costume. That's not a bad bit.
It's not.
I feel like it has to be a very light costume because again, these should be more funny than painful on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Right. The whatever we decide for the end of the year, you might have to do an entire show in a dino suit or something, but a small something, just it'd be really funny is the glasses and the mustache.
Yep.
Just like that. You have to do an entire 3 hours in that.
Yeah, something slight. At first, he had proposed going to a game in a costume. I said that might be an end of a season kind of a thing, but
the vibe,
we need something weekly.
People on the internet are they didn't get the bit. It's no. This is a small weekly competition. This is not the game. This is a competition Wednesday. This is not competition Sunday. It's competition Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. So he also had extra hot wings.
I did think about a hot ones adjacent challenge.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
I don't think that's the worst. Not the hottest wing, but the Buffalo Wild Wings just closed right down the road. I think in Navy Yard.
They did. No, it's still open. I think
it still is. I don't know. Someone told me it was closed.
Anyway, no. Russell said not.
No, it's yeah. I mean, talk about an expert. Like mango habanero level hot. Not your what's the one on hot ones that everyone dies on? That's terrible. Atomic or the bomb. That one. We're not. That's a year end bit. We're talking about the wing before, maybe the one before that for a weekly.
Yeah, and then the other two that he proposed are a little insane.
Okay.
And I mean a lot insane.
Okay.
One was an IHOP stay-in, and then two was
too involved. And plus, we're trying to do them during the show.
Yeah. The other one was a paintball from 15 feet. That's painful.
Yeah, that's too much. That's too much.
That one's painful.
If they want to do those on their show, they can. No, ours are. And plus, that's part of us shrinking some of these down. Is we want to be able to do them, except for the ice bath, I guess. Although that would be pretty amazing if we just filled up an ice bath or a garbage can somewhere in the station and do it that way, old school. But most of them we want to be able to do them on the show. So if you have to eat your hot wings or whatever on the show, then we'll figure that out. Yeah. I like the hot wings one because we can just go down the street. If B-Dubs wants to sponsor it, we can.
And the costume show.
We can do that, and I like the costume.
So we got 6.
Okay, that's 6. Okay, now you need to finish the wheel.
Yes, I got to do that.
And that's all right. Cool. I like where we're at. You know why else I like where we're at? Because David Harrison's going to join us next for Not My Beat on a Competition Wednesday here on the Team 980.
Sunday, it's Burgundy.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5:30, it is our edition of Competition Wednesday. We just laid out what the punishments will be. Anthony will choose his punishment as he lost week 1, and then we will get into, the next week because we got to pick another slate of games, and then we got to see who wins next week, and then we'll have to spin the wheel again. It's an endless cycle of, hopefully for Anthony, it's a little different next week, and I have to do something bad, or maybe we'll even tie. But based off recent history, it's gonna be a lot of Anthony doing silly human tricks all year long. Sorry, Anthony, I promise to start being nice about this as soon as you start picking games correctly.
In due time.
In due time. It is now time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
It is our pleasure today to welcome in for what I believe is the first time our guy David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, Sports Illustrated. He's been on the beat for a couple years now. Does a really great job, asks really great questions at the press conferences. He's gotten to get to know the locker room quite a bit, and it's my dumb fault that he hasn't been on the show yet. But, David, we're fixing that right now. How you doing, man?
What's up, man? How you been?
Doing pretty well. So I always, when I was on the beat, Wednesday was kind of an interesting day to be in the locker room because you get a feel for how the guys are bouncing back from the loss. Obviously, everyone's pretty bummed right after. That's going to be the case no matter what. But by Wednesday, you kind of get the vibe of how the team is handling it and focusing on the next week. So as you guys went in that locker room today, what was the vibe? Of course, Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn at the podium, but then ultimately of the players that you got a chance to talk to.
Yeah, just a lot of determination to put the past behind them and move forward and make sure that the second time they go out there, the result is a lot more like what they expected. From in the first game from a competitive standpoint, but then obviously you want the result to be better. I think the way Jeremy Reeves put it was, you got to get this taste out their mouth. You know what I mean? And obviously that's going to take getting a win against the New York Giants. I think that a lot of guys, it's not the division, rivalry thing, even though that is obviously important. And it's not even the fact that, the Giants have had this team's number, at least not losing to this team, if not, straight up beating this team quite often, because a lot of these guys weren't here for all those, for a lot of those games. So it's about them internally, and it's about what they're trying to accomplish. It's not about any of that outside influence. And honestly, I think that's a good role to put this thing. I think it's a good way to approach this thing because, I think previous versions of this team, we've seen they've kind of been externally motivated, right? When they come in against like a Buffalo Bills team, they try really hard, even though it doesn't always go very well. They go out there with more effort and more energy than usual, but then they come in against a team like the New York Giants, and their energy basically matches the opponent. Well, this is looking to be an internally motivated team who wants to go out there every week with maximum energy. I was actually curious, Craig. I was wondering how the bags drill would look today, coming off of a loss, coming off of a disappointment. Some guys called it an embarrassment in week 1, things like that. And the energy was just as high. So, for as small of a grain of salt that is, I think it kind of sets the tone and shows the mindset these guys are in right now.
No, I love that internal versus external motivation. I think that's a really astute point and something to kind of follow and track as the year goes. David Harrison, Sports Illustrated, Locked On Commanders with us here on the Hoffman Show. Even thinking back to the weekend and whatever lingering conversations you had about Sunday today, David, and whoever you've talked to over the past couple of days, what was the level of surprise internally of how specifically the defense performed against Tampa?
Yeah, I think the biggest, surprise from them would be their inability to finish. There was a good amount of pressures and there was a good amount of scenarios where they did the right things up until it came time to finish the play. And obviously, you could argue that you win a rep at the line of scrimmage, you win the rep at the snap, at the release, in the defensive back's mind, all that good stuff. But ultimately, it doesn't matter when you win the route. If at the end of it, you don't make the play, it doesn't matter, right? You look at the dropped interception by Benjamin St-Juste. You can call that a rep that you win, even though there's a penalty associated with it as well. You still want to see the guy come up with the interception. Then you've got other plays. I watched a lot of Frankie Louvu's tape, and I was talking to him a little bit about what I saw in the locker room today. And there's a rep where he comes crashing in. The Buccaneers have a screen called for Rashad White, and Frankie Louvu comes crashing through from a defensive angle on the left side A gap, and what he ends up doing is forcing that guard and that center to double team him to keep him from smashing Baker Mayfield's face in. And so that center, instead of getting out ahead of that screen, what he's got to do is stay in to block Frankie Louvu. The result there is that another defender comes free to try to make a play on Rashad White as soon as the ball is getting there. The problem is the tackle ends up missed. Rashad White ends up gaining like 9 yards on that play. So what should be either a loss or maybe at best or at worst a 0-yard gain or a no gain ends up being a successful play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not because the function wasn't there, not because the operation wasn't sound, but because when it came time to finish it all, it faltered and fell through.
Since you watched Louvu, he's someone that I've been kind of curious to follow up on, and someone that I've got a gigantic pin in for all the obvious reasons. They actually gave him multi-year money, et cetera, et cetera. I felt like when I watched him, and I didn't go back and watch like all of his pass rush snaps. I guess I could now pretty easily with NFL Pro, but maybe I'll do that before we do Take Command or whatever tomorrow. Do it by the weekend. But since you went ahead and watched him, I felt like in what I did watch, David, the pass rush juice, like you see some of the explosiveness, but I'm just not like, oh, this is an elite pass rusher waiting to happen. I felt like some of his more effective rushes came from blitzes and kind of the ways he's traditionally gotten his sacks when he was in Carolina. What did you see, though, watching each and every snap from Frankie Louvu specifically as a pass rusher?
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that's going to win in games. You know what I mean? Like in some games, they run with him. He's actually, the block eater or the decoy, whatever you want to call him. He's the guy that's going to spring somebody else loose, and sometimes he's the guy that they're trying to spring loose. And for multiple reasons on different snaps, sometimes it worked better than other times. There's a specific rep where he's got a blitz call through the B gap, and the defensive linemen are supposed to kind of open that door for him. And they actually do a fairly good job. And to be quite honest with you, it looks to me like Graham Barton, the Buccaneers rookie center, actually sticks his left leg out there as Louvu is screaming through that gap. And actually trips him. I mean, according to NFL rules, he actually goes out there and trips him. And for one, the center is not supposed to be in that position anyway, so you kind of see him deliberately move into the line of fire where Louvu's coming through. And look, if you're a Bucs teammate, you're patting that dude on the helmet and saying, hey, good job, because taking a full-grown man to the thigh at that speed and Frankie Louvu's aggression is not going to feel good, but ultimately it keeps Louvu from getting to Baker Mayfield. So there's kind of some things like that. But honestly, I watched a lot of his reps, and a lot of the action that the Buccaneers were calling, whether it's runs or rollouts or even primary looks, were actually going away from Louvu. I don't know that was necessarily by design on the Buccaneers' part, or if that's just kind of how it worked out. But there's a solid amount of reps where the play just simply isn't going his way. And Dan Quinn kind of talked about that today when he was asked about how you hold people accountable and go through some of these lessons. And he says, look, not every rep has a lesson for every single player. Some reps, there's a lesson for you. Some reps, there's not a lesson for you, just depending on where the play goes. And that's kind of how I look at it. I didn't do the math on how many, but if I had to speculate on just a number, I'd say about 35% of the Buccaneers' offensive plays honestly went in a direction where Frankie Louvu really wasn't a part of it just because of where the play developed. So that on top of some of the other things, like I said, the missed opportunities, if that defender makes that play on Rashad White, we go back and look at the highlight, and I think more people see that Frankie Louvu kind of set the tone and set the table for that play to happen, but because it's a missed tackle, nobody's going to go through and wonder who opened the door for the potential tackle that nobody made, because that's just not how we operate. So I think that if this defense as a whole is able to start finishing a little bit better, you'll start to see where some of these games and some of these guys play off of each other and how effective that can be.
David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Also, David, when he doesn't have to rush against Tristan Wirfs, it'll probably go better. And I don't know that we collectively gave Tampa's offensive line enough credit going in and set up that battle as like, hey, Tampa's got a big advantage here because their offensive line is maybe, depending on how some of these young guys develop, like top 5, top 10 in the league. And obviously New York's they've got some talent there, but it's been real bad the last couple of years. So we'll see what they can do on Sunday. One of the other guys that came with Louvu from Carolina is Jeremy Chin. I thought he was pretty quiet on Sunday. David, what did you make of his Commanders debut?
Yeah, he's a guy that, you kind of notice how much you don't notice him, right? Because he's a guy who has such a versatile role. There's actually one rep where he's left as a single high safety, which I was a little bit surprised of because people who covered him in Carolina would tell you last year that that's really where he got exposed and kind of ultimately what led to his falling out, where everybody kind of understood that at the end of last season he wasn't going to be back with the Panthers organization. I think it was a mutual decision at the end of the day. Both sides kind of agreed that relationship was over. But from the Panthers side of things, they'll tell you, like, he just wasn't versatile enough of a safety. And that's where, I think a lot of Commanders fans who wanted, like, Cam Curl to come back, you're like, okay, he's got a little bit of that box presence, but he can also cover. Jeremy Chin is more so, that hybrid linebacker. Some people call it a star, whatever you want to call it in your scheme is fine. But basically, he's just a linebacker who's back there and kind of provides, I would say, average coverage ability. But to see him left back there as a single high safety was a little bit surprising. And there was only the one rep where I really noticed it because I was actually watching Frankie, but it just kind of stood out to me in that play specifically. So, he's again, it's kind of a situation where some of these guys, like, you're going to have guys that I think you expect to be able to win one-on-one from time to time. I think Dorrance Armstrong Jr. is a guy who's going to be expected to be able to do that. But I think a lot of these guys, Frankie, Jeremy Chin, Jamin Davis even, he made a couple really good plays. But even the plays where Jamin Davis flashed, it's actually the work of other guys that in tandem with what opens up that opportunity. And in those opportunities, Jamin was able to close, which is, again, why it stands out. But I think that a lot of these players are players that they just got to play off of each other. But that's what Joe Jr. wants, and those are the games that they're going to play up front, and the stunts and the twists and the delays. And, one guy drops out, another guy replaces them, things like that. It's just a matter, again, of just getting in there to close. I didn't watch Jeremy Chin's film from an aspect of breaking him down specifically, but absolutely noticing that we didn't notice him. Certainly, you want to be able to notice a guy like that who's expected to be kind of a focal point of this defense.
Yeah, when that dude makes plays, it is a big, like, oh, you notice him. Big hits, physical play, right. And just didn't seem to pop off the screen at all on Sunday. Obviously, David, offensively, that is where most people are paying attention because of Jaden. And nationally, the story this week, if you listen to any national podcast or if you read any of the columns, like, Fowler and Graziano do their, insider column from ESPN. And I'm like, sometimes it feels like you guys just read a stat sheet and see a number, and there's not a whole lot of context here in terms of the Jaden running story. Yes, he had 16 attempts. Obviously, they did not want him to have that many, and a lot of that is on him to actually get the ball out of his hands. But Jaden spoke, Dan spoke, you talked to other people in the locker room. What do we make of how they make sure that he does not run the ball as much moving forward, and is that even actually a stated goal with internally with Cliff Kingsbury and whatever instructions he's getting from DQ?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that it's probably going to be a stated goal, as in, like they put a cap on him, like, hey, dude, you're not allowed to run the ball, combined between design runs and scrambles, you're not allowed to run the ball more than 12 times. We're going to kind of put a cap on you, because if you do that, you obviously run the risk of taking a guy out of his game and away from what makes him special. And Dan Quinn talks about it all the time, superpowers, right? Well, one of Jaden Daniels' superpowers is the ability to athletically dictate the pace of the game. Another one of his superpowers, I think, is his ability and willingness to make really quick decisions, because we see a lot of rookie quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, first-year starters like we saw last year, who kind of get to this point where they're basically afraid to make a decision. And I've always said the worst decision you can make is no decision, because it used to be make a decision and it's a wrong decision, we can work with you, right? Every coach wants you to play fast, because if you're playing fast, I can work with that. But if you're playing hesitant, you're playing scared, there's a lot wrong with that. So you want Jaden making decisions at a high rate. The trick is, let's get him tuned in. Let's get him focused, right? Let's zero him in to a shot group where the quick decision he's making is the quick decision that we want him making and the best one on the field. And, that's going to take experience. He's a rookie quarterback. He impressed a lot of us with his training camp decision-making and his poise and all that stuff. And I think for some people, what that led to was, like, thinking that this rookie quarterback maybe is like this, otherworldly rookie quarterback, where the truth of the matter is, no, like, that was his first NFL game, really, and that was his first NFL rep. And, the first time he saw a fire blitz, that was his first time seeing a fire blitz in the National Football League at that speed with that type of aggression. And, he's a human being just like anybody else, so the reputation of Todd Bowles' defense and how exotic it can be and aggressive it can be, that's going to be in anybody's head. So I think, was he a little bit fast to the run decision? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, you also look at the opportunities for him to run were mostly successful, mostly positive. He is getting down. I know a lot of people don't like the combat role that he's doing instead of the slide, and I get that. But, the decisions he's making are good decisions. The issue, if you want to call it that, is there are better decisions to be made on some of these reps, and that's what they're going to work on fine-tuning and honing in. And as Jaden watches this tape and goes through these experiences, he's just like anything else. Like when you walk up to the mic, with a guest for the second time, you have that first-time experience with that guest, and like, hey, this dude doesn't answer questions very long. Or when you get, David Harrison on, he talks too much, so I only need like 5 questions for this segment. Like, you have a better way to attack that next experience, and that's what Jaden Daniels is going through right now.
David Harrison talking very well here on the Hoffman Show. His first appearance, yes, he will definitely be making a second sooner rather than later. No need to worry about that. To follow up on that, though, David, last thing I'll ask you is, are you surprised is such a simple version of the question, but the context of are you surprised he ran that much would be what we did see in training camp, which is he didn't really get out and run very much at all in camp. He did a really good job, way better than I expected based off the LSU tape, of when he needed to get out, keeping his eyes downfield, and he made a bunch of really nice throws off schedule, and you're like, whoa, if this is what he can do, oh my God, we should have been talking about him up there with Caleb Williams as that caliber, as opposed to, I think, some people certainly had Jaden and Caleb right next to each other. The wide majority had Caleb on a different level, and it in part because of that very skill. And so the fact that when it wasn't there on Sunday, he ran as much as he did, I think was a bit of a surprise. But that's the premise. What are your thoughts on that? That's probably not my journalism professor's favorite question that I'll ever ask in an interview, but I think it's the way to let you drop your knowledge on us within the context that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm absolutely surprised at the amount, right? I'm not surprised at all to see Jaden Daniels take the opportunity and say, okay, with what I'm seeing right now, what I'm feeling, my instincts say take off. And that's actually a question he was asked today is, when you decide to run, kind of what's going through your head. And he said, it's a little bit hard to describe because it's not really like a thought process of, there's a safety there, a linebacker there, I'm going to go. It's more of an instinctual, see grass, get grass type of environment. And I think that really kind of just speaks to who Jaden is. And a lot of it is muscle memory. A lot of it is instinctual. So that's the challenge for, these coaches is through the use of tape. He says he's continuing to use the VR. That can be a valuable tool. And just through the repetition of getting on an NFL field, turn that muscle memory and instinct, right? Basically fight or flight, like turn your fight instinct, because that's really what he's doing when he's running is he's getting as many yards as he can for his team. Turn that instinct from run to give Terry McLaurin a chance when he's running that over, down the seam, throw that ball out there and give him that chance. And, I think sometimes too, we kind of underestimate the pressure that's on a quarterback every time they release a football. Their reputation is on the line. Their legacy, so to speak, is on the line. And I don't think that Jaden is dropping back. He gets a pass call. He's like, okay, the future of Jaden Daniels is riding on this pass. But the truth of the matter is, especially in today's world of, exploding social media and everything, when you hear people talk about the 30 and 30 Jameis Winston season, how many people recount how many times an interception was caught off of the fingertips of a wide receiver? How many times do people talk about the interception that was caught because the defensive lineman got their hand up and batted the ball into the air because the offensive lineman didn't push and punch enough to keep that D lineman's hands down? Nobody talks about that. All you talk about is the 30 and 30, and everybody laughs about it. So, there's a little bit of an understandable, again, when you're looking at a rookie quarterback, you want to give your guy a chance. And I think that's where, for me, I was a little bit surprised because looking at training camp and the joint practices, I thought Jaden would more confidently be willing to put the ball up and let his guys make plays for him. And he didn't do that as much as I expected him to, and that's where some of those runs came from. I don't think it's from I don't trust Terry, I don't trust Zach Ertz situation. I think it's a rookie quarterback the first time this thing is on the line because, even though Dan Quinn's not putting the cape on him and not putting the captain's patch on him, he's the quarterback. So at the end of the day, quarterback of your team is, whether you call that, whether he breaks down the huddle or not, he is the leader of that team. And there's a lot of pressure that rides from him. I think that's what we saw in week 1. And again, hopefully week 2 it's better, week 3 a little bit better, week 4, so on and so forth. And I know everybody likes to do the Texans comparison, so maybe, eventually you get that C.J. Stroud moment. But the good thing about Jaden is as long as he keeps playing the way that he plays and true to his game, and this coaching staff keeps coaching him true to his game instead of trying to change him, clicks, I feel like it's going to click really big, and I feel like it's going to click really loud.
David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, and you can read his work in Sports Illustrated on their website at si.com and all their Commanders coverage there. David, this was great, dude. Let's definitely do it again, and we'll be having you back plenty this season.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right, that's David Harrison, everybody, with us on The Hoffman Show. When we get back, it is Competition Wednesday. 3 games. Anthony and I go head-to-head against the spread. And then, based off how we do, we have to spin a wheel of minor punishment. Anthony's going to spin the wheel, and we pick our next 3 games next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and it is Competition Wednesday. So here is what that means for us. Of course, the Commanders have Competition Wednesday where they do drills that add a little bit of competitive flair to their practices. For us, we just pick a couple extra games, and we do it against the spread, so a little bit more challenging. And we don't necessarily go head-to-head in terms of picking the same games, but Anthony and I each get to pick 3 games. So we're in total control of what we do. And then assuming that one of us finishes with a better record than the other, the loser has to spin a wheel of punishment and perform that punishment either on the show, depending on what it is. Like if Anthony hits this wheel and gets the 10 handstand push-ups, then I think he's just going to have to go do 10 handstand push-ups against the wall while I laugh at him. If it's 100 push-ups, and he's got until 6 o'clock to do it, so he's going to have to get a move on. Although we might let him do it tomorrow because he is wearing a very nice shirt. And the push-ups do feel like it would be a little hard to. So maybe Anthony, you'll be off the hook for today, and we can do the push-ups tomorrow. But we also have added a couple of other punishments on there. One of them is our classic show punishment, which is loser buys winner lunch. And that's going to have to wait till next week because I'm in Indianapolis right now, which is why if you're watching us on YouTube, you're like, why is Craig in a headset in what looks like a hotel room? Because I'm wearing a headset in a hotel room. All right, so last week, I think I have these actually over here. Yeah, I do. Anthony, I have my picks from last week. I don't have yours. I had Green Bay plus 2.5 against Philly. I lost that one. But I had Chicago minus 4 against Tennessee. Chicago won by a touchdown. Cover. New England plus 8.5 against Cincinnati. They won outright. So I'm 2-1. Anthony Haney, how'd your picks come out?
Oh, you're 2-1?
Yeah, I was.
I don't think any of my hit.
You went 0-3?
Baltimore plus 3. Nope. And I would have hit that, had Likely's toe not been out.
Well, it depends on what happens in overtime. If the Chiefs walk off on a touchdown.
Oh, no, the Ravens were going for 2.
That's true. That's true. So
John
you would have had
Harbaugh
it either
said
way.
this.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Green Bay plus 2.5. We both got that one wrong. And then, for some silly reason, I thought the Colorado Buffaloes were going to win the game against Nebraska. But I'm not going to lie, Craig. I think Nebraska is better than a lot of people.
I think Colorado's. I think Deion's a mess, bro.
Oh, well, 2 things can be true, I guess. Yeah. So I went 0-3. I have the wheel over here. I don't think. Oh, there it is. You can see. But the thing is, I need to get closer.
Yeah, microphones work when you talk in them.
Yeah, I don't think we can do the wheel today. 2 of the spaces are still open because I was, cutting and
you didn't finish your arts and crafts project in time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so we might have to use the alternative method.
The alternative method required minimal extra setup, Anthony, and you didn't tell me that in the break. So now as I roll around trying to find my backpack, which has an extra microphone. Oh, the extra microphone. Actually, I could do this. Hold on. Keep talking. Keep describing for the radio audience that can't see what is the saddest prize wheel that has ever been put together.
First of all, oh, my gosh, for you to disrespect my will.
I didn't disrespect your effort. I am disrespecting your skill.
Yeah, I think I might have to go back to the drawing board when it comes to this, just because the paper I put in there is a little flimsy, and the little spinner is like getting caught on the paper. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to modify how I really want to do the wheel. So next Wednesday, I guess we'll officially debut
the
wheel of punishments, and it will be exciting. It shall be exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many different punishments do we have?
So we have 6.
We have 6.
Yes. We have 6. We have 6, and they are posted on the wheel twice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What? Oh, I have a pen. Okay. What? The 2 that we've added. So we have lunch. We have the 100 push-ups. We have a fantasy sub. We have the ice bath. We have 10 handstand push-ups.
We have the extra hot wings.
Did we skip the handstand push-ups? I think we decided that we just wanted one physical fitness test. So we have hot wings.
And then we have a costume show.
And we have costume. Okay. Now, because I am in a hotel room in Indianapolis, I do have company, as in my wife is here with me. So, Rachel, may I borrow you for a second? You don't have to be on camera. I just need your voice in this microphone. It's very, you can say no. But it's literally all I need you to do is a double-digit number, so 10 to 70. I just need one number.
13.
13. Okay. Anthony, you luck out. You're going to buy me lunch. That's all I need. Thank you.
Okay. That's easy.
Yeah. What I did was I had them labeled 1 through 6, and whatever the first digit that she said was, if she had said 20-something, you would have had to do the push-ups. 30-something fantasy sub. So I didn't want to like make it 1 through 6, and then she could have looked at my list. She didn't know the methodology. So lucky number 13 for you. You just have to buy lunch.
Okay, that's smooth. I can do that.
All right. So do you want to plan that? Well, Monday we have the. I don't know if you saw, the Wizards are doing their media thing on Monday. Including the. Are you going to play in the pickup game? I'm not going to because I am gonna. My legs are going to be toast from a weekend long run of 9
Yes,
miles.
I want to play.
Okay.
I want to go out there.
Have you told the people?
No, I have not.
Okay, you need to tell Ketsia and them. But anyway, the point is, we could either do Monday after the show, or we could aim for Tuesday, or perhaps next Wednesday. You could have to pay it off. That would also work.
Yeah,
So,
let's do next
Wednesday. Competition Wednesday. We should have a meeting with the boss, I think. Or do we have that this week? No, we don't, because today's Wednesday. Duh. Yeah. So before the meeting next week, you owe me lunch. Okay. So that was easy, kind of. We'll also have our wheel. We'll make sure that the arts and crafts project is done. I'm glad that I had my sheet of paper and the extra microphone within an arm's reach. Very scientific method there. Now there's one thing left to do, Anthony, and that is pick games. Pick 3 more games. Who you got? Or would you like me to go first?
We can alternate.
Okay, that's fair.
All right. So I'm back supporting the flock, the Ravens. They play the Raiders this weekend, and the spread is 9.5, minus 9.5. I'm rolling with the Ravens again. I think they get it done. I think they beat the Raiders by more than 10 points. If the Chargers were able to do it, I'm thinking the Ravens are more than capable of getting the job done. I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens, minus 9.5, baby.
So, I think we have our first head-to-head here, because I'm going Vegas plus the 9. You got it at 9.5. I would rather that number, obviously.
Yep.
All right, where are you seeing it?
What is the number you're looking at?
I got minus 9 from ESPN, but are you going on MGM?
I'm on CBS.
CBS? Okay. It's better for me. I'll take Vegas plus 9.5.
Where are the ESPN spreads?
In their when they list all the games.
Oh, because I was looking at Syracuse's point spread. I couldn't find theirs.
But
that's why.
I'm going to take the better number. All right, so I've got Vegas plus 9.5. That was going to be my my first pick.
Okay.
My second pick, I think I'm going to ride the Bears again. The Bears are on the road on Sunday Night Football against the Texans. And I just think defensively they are good enough to make this a game. I don't think I'm going to wind up picking them outright. And does Caleb Williams against a very good Houston defense scare me a little bit? Yes, but like Anthony Richardson played them very well last week, and he's basically a rookie, and I would say is not as advanced as a passer as Caleb. And while Chicago's defense did get the benefit of playing Will Levis, and now they have to deal with C.J. Stroud, I'm getting 6 points. I'm going to take it. I'm going to go Chicago plus 6 against Houston.
Okay. Chicago +6 against Houston. I like the way you think, Craig. But guess what?
What's that?
I have a sleeper.
A sleeper?
Of a pick. Well,
A
not a sleeper,
sleeper.
I guess. I'm going to be riding with my Indianapolis Colts. They suit up against Malik Willis and the Packers. And the point spread on that game, 3.5. Give me the Colts minus the 3.5.
I definitely don't hate that pick, and there is some temptation to follow you down that road. But in the interest of being interesting, I will leave that game alone.
Okay.
And instead, man, am I going to bet on the Patriots again? Am I a sick person? What is wrong with me? Here would be my reasoning why. Also, first of all, what line do you have for the Seahawks-Patriots game? Because you seem to be off a half a point. You have 3?
3.5.
Okay, I've got 3.5 as well. The Seahawks are good, but it's a 1 o'clock game at New England. And it just feels like the kind of game, screw it. Let's do it. I'm taking all dogs this week. I'm taking, this is the kind of uncomfy that doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've learned anything from Sheehan over the years when it comes to this stuff, that's how you're supposed to feel. I will say the stinkiest fish of the week, the one that makes absolutely no sense, is the Cardinals are favored by 1 against the Rams at home, which feels like just take the Rams, but that line stinks the high heavens, so I'm staying away from it. But I'm gonna go Vegas +9.5, Chicago +6, New England +3.5 at home. Those are my 3 Competition Wednesday official submissions.
Say no more, Craig. My last one, I'm taking this team right here.
Didn't you already say 3?
Pittsburgh, huh?
Didn't you already say 3?
No, I said 2.
You went first. How did I get?
I think you. So after I went coach, you went again.
Okay.
It was supposed to be me again.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Broncos -3. I'm taking all the favorites this week. You're taking all the dogs. I'm taking all the favorites. I think Bo Nix is about to be running for his life. After I saw what TJ Watt did last weekend, man. I like that number, -3.
I hear you. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I definitely don't. There's a couple picks that I like of yours, Anthony. So maybe this is a week. Maybe, who knows? Maybe by next Wednesday, I'm spinning a wheel to eat, and I wind up having to eat some hot wings or something. But
I'm not going to lie. The 9.5 is starting to scare me, Craig.
Too late now. That's Competition Wednesday here on the Hoffman Show. Coming up at 6 o'clock, it is our Pick 6 at 6. Ton of news out of Ashburn today. We get you caught up in just 15 minutes. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we got our pick six at 6. Ton of good stuff. Dan Quinn today talking about the third down defense. Updates on Emmanuel Forbes. Was he hurt? Did he get benched? What's going on? So we got more from DQ coming up at 6 o'clock. Jaden Daniels also spoke today. Had plenty of interesting things to say about how much he ran and all the other things that you'd expect him to say or to talk about. But tonight, Anthony, I mentioned this in What's Trending. Mystic Sky in Chicago. 8 o'clock, and it is ridiculous how lucky the WNBA got from a schedule standpoint down the stretch of this season, that there is just one playoff spot remaining. But the teams that are battling for it, there are 3 remaining. They all play each other. Like there's 5 games left, and I think each team has 3 games against the other teams in the mix. So right now, the Mystics are in 10th, right? 8th is your last spot. 10th is where the Mystics are. They are 2 games back of Chicago. Obviously, if they beat Chicago head-to-head tonight, that shrinks down to 1 game, and they would leapfrog Atlanta, who lost to Minnesota last night. The Mystics then have a game Friday at Atlanta, Sunday home against Atlanta, and they really need to win all 3 because they then face on Tuesday the Liberty, yikes, best team in the league, and then at Capital One Arena next Thursday they face Indiana, who's the hottest team in the league, as Caitlin Clark and company have caught absolute fire since the Olympic break. Meanwhile, Atlanta, who again is a half game ahead of the Mystics right now, has just 4 games remaining, and it's Mystics at home in DC on the 15th over the weekend, and then they host Chicago next Tuesday and then close at New York. Meanwhile, the Sky, as you can imagine, you already have a lot of their schedule based off the games that I already mentioned. They have DC tonight, then they're at Minnesota, home against Phoenix, at Atlanta, at Connecticut. So 3 really, I'm going to use the word intense schedules, Anthony, because you got 3 teams fighting for 1 spot. They all play each other, and then they're like any other game that they're not playing each other, they're playing playoff teams. This is going to be a fun week and a half to close the WNBA season.
Definitely going to be fun. I feel as though we probably would have the last spot secured up if we, weren't injured as much as we had been all season long. You talk about, what Brittany Sykes brings to this Washington team, and we see it on a night in, night out basis. Like, she's a stat sheet stuffer, and her impact on the game is just, phenomenal. So, again, like you said, the NBA, they got lucky in terms of, how the NBA season panned out for all 3 of these teams. And I want the Mystics to go out there and win, put forth their best foot. But, I still have my eyes on a bigger prize than, the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, realistically,
it stinks,
whoever's going to be the 8th seed is going to make the playoffs and then probably get their doors blown off by New York, because New York is really, really good. That actually gets to, you talk about the bigger prize, though, Anthony. The I don't know if you call it funny, ironic, whatever word you want to use. Part of all of this, the other piece of this is the Mystics are guaranteed the Mystics are guaranteed to get a lottery pick. Mm-hmm. Because they have Atlanta's pick. It's Atlanta traded it to Dallas traded it to Washington, and so depending on what happens here, if Chicago takes that final seed, then the Mystics will have 2 lottery picks. If the Mystics obviously miss the playoffs and Atlanta makes it, they'll have just the 1. They'll have their own. If they wind up leapfrogging both of these teams, then they would get Atlanta's pick in the lottery. Now, the lottery is fairly heavily weighted in the LA Sparks' favor. They have already locked up the number 1 lottery odds, and they have a 44% chance at the number 1 pick, which is projected to be Paige Beckers, which LA would definitely take Beckers because they need a point guard to go with Rickea Jackson and Cameron Brink. Damn, that squad would be loaded. and talk about star power in LA with those three. Oh my God. But there's 3-4 good players in this draft, for sure, like potential franchise changers. So making sure you get one of those top 4 picks is huge. And realistically, if you have 2 of them, could you trade and get back up higher if you really, really like Kiki Arifin, who's going to be at USC this year with Juju Watkins. She's been at Stanford the last couple of years. I know there's like a 6'6" like French post player that is really good. That's like 18 years old and is a stud. So she's going to be in this draft. So there's definitely a lot of talent. Beckers is certainly the prize. I'm not going to say to the level that Clark was last year, but pretty darn close in terms of both a player and the star power that comes with it. The summer of Paige is finally over. She's finally back in class. Although who knows, she could hop on a plane and be anywhere, it seems like. But it's going to be really fun, and it all starts tonight in terms of the playoff push, 8 o'clock on Monumental Sports Network, which means it is simulcast here on the Team 980 with Megan McPeak and Christy Winters-Scott. We have one more hour of business to take care of ourselves, though. And by the way, if that's not enough hoops for you, I'm in Indy right now because I'm going to Fever Aces tonight, and they play again on Friday. So you got great action all around the W the rest of the weekend. But, of course, here, I say here as I'm sitting in Indianapolis, but here, if you will, where most of you are listening in D.C., all eyes are on Ashburn, and we'll get you caught up on the news of the day with our Pick 6 at 6 next. Hoffman Show, final hour here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And just after 6 o'clock, it is time to get you caught up on the top Commander storylines of the day. We do it like this. It's our Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, let's start off talking about the quarterback because, duh, that's what we always start off talking about. Both Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn spoke today about Daniels' rushing attempts on Sunday, which has kind of become the national story. It's interesting reading some of the articles from the National Insiders, and that's the angle they chose to focus on, or, you know, some lines in a podcast, some of the national ones I listen to. If they mention the Commanders, it's like, hey, they got to figure out how to get Jayden not to run as much. And to me, they're both right and wrong, right? They're right in the fact that Jayden Daniels did run too much on Sunday, but I don't know that the blame is necessarily going all of the right places. So Quinn was asked about the pure number of attempts and what they do and what he thought about it, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, fair question. And sometimes getting outside the pocket you also remain a passer, let a route develop, or, you know, the option of, you know, checking it down to somebody else. So the great thing about him, I know you guys know this, like, it is our first game. And, like, he's going to be an exceptional player. There are choices when to go, when to not. Like, you do have to grow and learn into those. And I am 100% certain that he will. But the other part of his game, like, there is legs, and when there's times to go and create a first down and get an explosive, it's there. But there's also some times to move outside the pocket, like we were talking about mobile quarterbacks. Now a whole nother play can begin. And so I think you'll see that part of our game come to life in the weeks ahead as well. Now really it's almost like a dual threat. It's the drop back, it's the outside the pocket, and then the running portion of it. So as a defensive coach, it creates a headache, one that I am more than happy to be a part of creating.
And he's right. I think the thing that they want long-term is to let's use your legs for optimal good, not just for some good. Because the thing is, most of the carries that Daniels had on Sunday ultimately resulted in good plays. It wasn't like he was out there, you know, running around losing 20 yards, or he didn't leave a ton on the field on a lot of the plays that he wound up scrambling. There was a couple where it's like, oh, man, you got to throw here. But I think sometimes it's just like we don't know what was left on the field. If you get the ball out as you start to scramble instead of tucking in and run and throwing it to Austin Eckler, who's already 7 yards downfield, what could he do in similar space with a 7-yard head start? Like, it's questions like that. Or if you start scrambling laterally and extend the play, does Terry break open and you've got the arm talent to fling the ball 20 yards over a linebacker, and now you got a 20-yard completion and you didn't have to put in nearly the effort to get a 15-yard scramble. 15-yard scramble is a great play, but a 20-yard completion is even better, and it will open up even more running lanes for you eventually because defenders are going to be a little bit more disciplined as opposed to feeling they can come off receivers because they feel if they come off the receiver, well, you're going to throw to said receiver. Now, Daniels also was asked about his propensity to run on Sunday and kind of how he processes all of that, and this is what the Commanders' rookie quarterback had to say about that.
I'll just say based off the situation. Obviously, that's like situational things. You know, you kind of just go from there. I can't really tell. It's like a instinctual thing, feel thing. Like, hey, the time is up. Obviously, you don't want to get hit by 300-pound plus people. So, you know, it's kind of just like that's kind of growing up my whole life, man. It's like just an instinct. Like that time, that clock in your head is like, all right, it's time to go.
And again, the clock is good. The question is, what do you do when the clock expires? And I think that when you combine Daniels and Quinn's comments is kind of the big thing. All right, number 2, Anthony, if we please could.
Number 2.
Number 2 is going to focus on the weapons that Jayden Daniels has to throw to before we flip things to the defense, and specifically one that we thought we might see, but is still working his way back. DQ with the latest on Noah Brown, who many of you were excited, and I certainly approve of the signing. Good signing after he was cut by the Texans, a guy that brings a little bit different level of juice to this offense potentially, but was inactive week 1. Where are we at with him learning the playbook and coming off the injury that kept him out most of Texans training camp?
A number of things, and there'll be some plays that will not show up that we didn't hit on. There'll be some plays that were close. There was a screen early in the game that our timing just wasn't quite right.
And let me set this up again. So there was two bites that we were gonna roll with. One was specific to Noah Brown. I can just summarize that one because we're a little short on time. Basically, he said Brown's still working his way towards it. It sounds like the injury is a bigger concern than getting to know the playbook. But then he was asked about how the wide receiver group performed in total on Sunday, and this is that bite.
A number of things, and there'll be some plays that will not show up that we didn't hit on. There'll be some plays that were close. There was a screen early in the game that our timing just wasn't quite right, Kendi, in terms of the ones to go. There was a shot at the start of the second half that we just missed on. And so the more time, the more plays in the game, the better. And so I like the group. These guys are a very competitive group all the way through. And I'm also excited to add Noah into that group. I've had some experience working with Noah. I know what he's about, what he stands for. So I'm hopeful that the trajectory will continue with him to get into that. But between OZ and Luke, of course, Terry being involved, that's a big deal for us too.
So there you go. Definitely the timing is a huge deal. And on screens especially, that is something that, with your O-line, with your receivers, with the quarterback, you got to get all on the same page. And you're like, why would you talk about screens so much? Well, I think it's going to be a big part of this offense. I think it's something that over the course of this season, obviously Cliff is trying to make sure that he limits the exposure of Jaden Daniels, and one of the ways you do that is with the screen game. It spreads the defense out, and then hopefully you get some running lanes. You can run it inside, throw it outside, and then, maybe that opens up the middle of the field a little bit. Maybe you can get an explosive off of, one of the fake screen type of plays where a guy goes fakes like he's going to block and then takes off up the sideline. And it's a similar throw for Jaden is kind of the slot fade, which is something he throws really well, and you can sneak a guy out if a team gets really aggressive on you. So there's all kinds of reasons why that stuff becomes really important, but it's a heightened thing in this offense. And I think it is, one of my early criticisms, one of the things that I feel comfortable saying that I disagree with this staff right now is how they handled the preseason. I would have loved to see more of this stuff in the preseason. And I just think it's an opportunity that when you're new and you're a team that's coming together and you don't have a lot of reps, to stack reps. Because while no individual rep is going to be the one that, is the straw that breaks the camel's back, there is a chance to stack some good days upon good days, and to do it in a game experience, to do it with the adrenaline of playing, to do it with the adrenaline of knowing you're actually going to get hit. And this team passed on that opportunity largely. And I don't agree with that philosophically. I understand it. I don't think it's malpractice by any stretch of the imagination. And I do wonder, if by October, November, if I were to pull Dan Quinn aside and be like, hey, now you probably haven't thought about this in a while, but in hindsight, do you wish you would have played your guys more in the preseason? I wonder what he would say. And he might say no, because while, clearly we understood some of the downsides, it wasn't worth the risk of getting a guy hurt. It's kind of a counter argument that's really hard to recounter, if you will. It's hard to rebuttal hey, it works out because none of our guys got hurt in terms of hurt in the games. Obviously, there are some injuries that they're battling, and we can get the latest on those next. Our Pick 6 continues after the break with a pure defensive look at things, including the latest on Johnny Newton and Emmanuel Forbes. That's next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, let's keep it rolling on our pick six here on the Hoffman Show. 6 biggest storylines of the day for the Commanders, brought to you at 6 o'clock. We've already talked about some of the offensive storylines, so let's dive into the defense. Anthony, fancy number 3, please. Maybe.
Number 3.
There we go. There's the big voice guy. That's what we're looking for. Obviously, number 3, as in 3 for third down. It was a disaster for the Commanders on third down. So, Dan Quinn, how do you go about fixing and undisasteritizing? That's a word, Anthony. I don't know if you know that. You should look it up. Did they teach you that at Georgetown Prep? Yeah. Undisasteritizing your defense.
Well, I think you want to go back and assess the calls first. So we call that self-scout to say, did it do what it intended to do? And then you look at the execution of something to say, sometimes a team can beat a leverage. All right, hey, they beat the call on that play, and that's acceptable. Other times, if you don't execute it how you want, that doesn't mean the call gets thrown out. It means you have to do things better. And usually when that happens, you want to make sure to streamline it to go execute it at the highest level. So that's what it is. I kind of referred to it earlier, our first lap together. So were there mistakes made? Yes. And will we improve upon those? You bet.
And that's life in the National Football League. You constantly got to get better and better and better. And sometimes you have the right call and bad execution, but sometimes you got the wrong calls. And that happened to the Commanders on Sunday too. Not so much on third down necessarily, although I do think Tampa had clearly a good plan. Joe Witt played a lot of man on third down. And, when you're playing man, it's not as simple as latch onto your man and hold on for dear life or cover for dear life. Like, there's rules of, hey, these two guys are crossing. Let's pass it off. Same way that you play pick and roll defense in basketball. If you're playing pickup, like, are you yelling switch or not? You got to know those things. You got to know your rules. You got to know who you're switching, who you're not. If you have two guys that kind of come together and then split back out or split in different directions than you were anticipating and the rules become muddy, you have to talk your way through it. And that's how Jalen McMillan got loose for his touchdown, for instance, when Quan Martin and Mike Sanders still weren't on the same page. And sometimes it's that. But also, sometimes you prepare for, power and inside and outside zone and, the running plays you expect, and then you get hit with a trap and a wham, and wham! You're in a bad spot. And now that both on the execution side and on the preparation side, the Giants and everybody else has a little bit of tape on what the Commanders are doing. What is the risk? They try to use some of that against them and use some of the same things that Tampa did. Dan Quinn asked that astute question today.
Of your team. Yeah, it's a great question. Generally, what we do with the team, if there was a play that was an issue, we bring it into the game plan this week like we're studying the other team. So let's say there was a pass play given up or a run or a blitz. That's now part of the game plan. To say they have something similar to this look. They have one that's this. So it's important because it's part of the self-scout. You can turn the page too quickly to the opponent, and this is what they do, this is what they do. But you also have to recognize they're studying you. And so the self-scout part of it is something that I look at, like this morning I was going back through the game again today to make sure, anything that I missed, that's my role to keep pushing those things to the forefront to say this look, this play, this specific thing could likely come up again. Will it be shown in the exact same format as you discussed? No. So that's a really important part of it. Self-scout is not something that you put off till a bye week or the end of the season. I think it's a weekly part of your assessment of your team.
And I would assume that specifically to the trap and wham stuff. So I think if you played Madden, you played football at a high school level, like you know what trap and wham are. But in case you're like, what exactly is that? Remind me. Maybe I ran a few too many traps and whams, and I blocked it out of my head, or it got blocked out of my head, depending on what position you played. You basically pull the backside guard so that you kind of let the defensive tackle win. And he's like, aha, I've got it. And then you have another guard coming from the other side that just knocks him out of the way. And you've got this really nice alley that you've let the first guard get up to the second level, and then if that second guard gets over there in time, it can push that guard out, or the defensive tackle, I beg your pardon, out. You've got this really nice alley and a block already on the second level, and it really takes advantage of defensive tackles that like to get upfield and penetrate, or defensive ends, depending on how you're running it, that like to get upfield and penetrate. And that's exactly what the Commanders are. And so my guess is this week at practice, they're going to be like, hey, if you feel that, like, this is how we're going to defend it. And it might involve that player continuing to try to penetrate and replacing them. It might involve that player being a little less aggressive, or just, hey, we're not going to fire off the ball quite as hard. That doesn't seem like how Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. want to play, so I doubt that. But whatever the solution is, I would bet that they have it. But that's every team, right? You know, the Commanders aren't the only team that got on Sunday. And even teams that won got on certain plays. And that is really when NFL football starts, is once you have tape and can scout, it becomes a completely different game, and that is absolutely where the Commanders and everyone else are after week one. Of course, players matter a whole lot too. Let's get to the latest on Johnny Newton and Emmanuel Forbes. Forbes, I'll just paraphrase that, and then, Anthony, we can hit the bite on Johnny Newton. Forbes, Quinn said he's battling a wrist issue. He's going to wear a splint, and it sounds like he's going to play. Obviously, they want him to play better, and we'll see his ability. You know, how does that affect his ability to catch the ball? I certainly hope we get to find out. I hope he's got his hands on a couple balls on Sunday. But for Johnny Newton, that one seems a bit more of a process.
When you're coming back from this, you may see him out today, but that's to set up for tomorrow. So we pushed it hard with him, conditioning that yesterday, hold today, but we wanted the padded day for him till tomorrow. And then so we're trending in the right way, much like we were talking about with Noah. We'll kind of have a better sense for when we get to Friday, but he's definitely trending in the right spot. So we're close for sure. And but I'll trust my eyes and make sure he's going through all the whole process to get ready. But he's definitely pushing it hard to get into this mix.
That last little bit from DQ is super important. I'm going to trust my eyes. That means it's in Dan's eyes, in Dan's hands. It doesn't sound like the medical staff is putting restrictions on. Now, they may say, hey, if he's going to play, we feel comfortable him playing X amount of snaps because he still is working back into shape, and we want to make sure that we have him for the long term. And that is obviously something that Dan Quinn is going to work with the medical team to do. But ultimately, that it sounds like it's Dan Quinn looking at Johnny Newton practicing, going, you are playing really well, we're going to play you, or still a little rusty, not quite on it in the way that we want to. Let's give you another week. All right, last but not least in our pick six. Daniel Jones is a quarterback who, against most teams, has not been very good in his NFL career. Against the Commanders, he has absolutely destroyed them. And a huge part of that is what he can do with his legs. And while Baker showed some nice escapability on Sunday, the challenge Daniel Jones presents, it's a lot bigger. DQ asked about that for the first time today.
The ability for the second play to begin. Oftentimes you'll see on a drop back, you'll hear us use the word like play above the 2.3, meaning the first play where a time to throw, that's a general NFL average. So when the second play begins, how do you respond? And so that, to me, is one of the things that make his game unique. He's got speed and athleticism. He remains a runner, where some QBs would go and get down or get out of bounds, and so he remains in that space and really has confidence in his running ability, which he should. But that's one of the real strong points of his game.
It's worth remembering that last year in week one, I believe it was week 1 or week 2, the Cowboys absolutely murdered the Giants. Just absolutely destroyed them. It wasn't it like, then they did it to the Jets. I can't remember which order. Well, the Jets played at home on week 1 last year because that's when Rodgers got hurt. So it must have been them week 2. And it was like Cowboys 90, New York teams 3 or whatever it was. It was ridiculous. So Dan Quinn, he's played against Brian Dable and had quite a bit of success. Joe Witt Jr. is part of that staff. They played against Daniel Jones. Hopefully they can bring that mojo to the Commanders, even if the talent that they would like to bring that they're going to have doesn't include the likes of Micah Parsons. So definitely going to be interesting to watch how they game plan this one up, but a much more familiar opponent this weekend for DQ and company. All right, when we get back, our old friend Don Van Natta is going to join us. Don't worry, that used to be the key words that meant something amiss or something was amiss with the Commanders because Don had written some investigative report. No, he's put his investigative skills to a different use, going inside Robert Kraft's quest for the Hall of Fame. Very, very interesting feature piece on ESPN.com that published this morning. We're going to talk to DVN about it next. The Hoffman Show, we're on the team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And it is our pleasure now to welcome back to the show our good friend, my good friend, Don Van Natta, ESPN senior writer, chief investigative reporter for ESPN. And Don, I feel like I have to just warn the audience, no, you didn't find anything new about the Commanders. Everybody's okay in D.C. But we're just going to talk about the story you wrote about Robert Kraft.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing new on the Commanders this time, Craig, but stay tuned. You never know.
You never know. There's still pending litigation against Dan Snyder, but now it's it's kind of I don't want to say a fun story, but it's not our problem in the same way that it used to be our problem. But Don, I do want to dive into this story that you wrote, published on ESPN.com this morning. Really fascinating look inside Robert Kraft's pursuit of a gold jacket. And there's so much here, but I just have to start by asking, what made you dive into this? What came across your desk? You're always talking to people around the NFL, but what came across your desk that you thought this was a story specifically worth pursuing with Kraft when so many NFL owners are trying in their own ways to get into the Hall of Fame?
Well, it really started, Craig, with a tip that came to me at the end of April, early May. I did a story back in April about Bill Belichick trying to get another job after he was let go by Robert Kraft in January. And Belichick only had one interview with the Atlanta Falcons. And there was a couple of calls between Robert Kraft and the owner of the Falcons, Arthur Blank, where Kraft did not say many positive things about Bill Belichick. He said, you can't trust him, to Arthur Blank. And in the course of reporting that, we actually mentioned this docuseries that came out in the winter called The Dynasty, and had a few sentences, throwaway sentences in that story about that. Well, that story was published. I got a tip. Hey, look a little more closely at the Dynasty documentary, which Robert Kraft publicly has said he had nothing to do with because the docuseries threw Bill Belichick under the bus. There's a lot more here than he has acknowledged publicly. So I started peeling back the layers of the onion there, and as it turned out, I discovered that the docuseries and a book that the docuseries was based on were actually, both of those are media projects that Robert Kraft had a secret interest in, a financial interest in. And it was part of a larger campaign that began way back in 2012 for Kraft to get into the Hall of Fame. He's not gotten in despite a relentless campaign by his PR guy, a guy named Stacey James. And so one thing led to another, and I decided to sort of write a broader piece about Kraft's quest to get in the Hall of Fame, why he's been unable to get there, and how these media projects fit into that campaign.
The media project side of this is something that I think you and I could talk about for hours over beers in terms of the state of biographies, autobiographies, and it's something you talk about in the piece where a lot of these shows now are kind of celebrity infomercials. But when it comes to the substance of Kraft and the Hall of Fame, and as you talk to people around the league and report out this story, on a baseline level, do most people think that he should actually be in the Hall of Fame? Is this a worthy pursuit for him, or is this a total vanity project that doesn't have any real standing?
No, that's the irony. It's not a vanity pursuit at all on Robert Kraft's behalf, on the people pushing for him. There's no question by any metric Robert Kraft deserves a gold jacket. He deserves a bronze bust in Canton. 6 Super Bowl titles. What he has done to keep the Patriots in New England. He's been an incredibly influential owner with labor relations. He helped, if you remember, in 2011 during the lockout to bring the players and owners together and got a deal done, an owners-friendly deal in 2011 and saved the season. He's been instrumental in the skyrocketing TV and streaming contracts that the NFL have landed with the broadcast networks and the streamers. So by every metric, Kraft deserves to get in. That's part of what made this story, I thought, Greg, as I pursued it, so intriguing is, well, what's going on here? Why is every year he's up for this gold jacket and every year he gets rejected by the voters? What's really going on here?
So obviously, if people want to get the full answer, they should, read the piece. Don Van Natta, ESPN investigative journalist, with us here on the Hoffman Show. But Don, if you were to summarize it down, or maybe even pick, because there's multiple things. Obviously, different voters have a different reason, and there's some structural stuff as well. If you had to identify the biggest reason Robert Kraft isn't a Hall of Famer yet, despite that resume you just laid out, what is it?
Well, I talked to more than a dozen voters, and they don't often talk about their secret deliberations, but some spoke to me on the record about their support for Kraft, and some spoke on background about reasons either that they didn't vote for him or reasons they think he is not been his name was not forwarded to the full 50 voters. And the scandal that kept getting mentioned the most, Craig, was Spygate. That's the spying operation, Bill Belichick's operation, spying on signals by opposing coaches with video cameras. The Patriots, paid dearly in 2007 for stealing opposing coaches' signals. Belichick was fined $500,000. The Patriots were fined $250,000, and the team gave up a first-round draft pick. There's this group of anti-Kraft voters that said that they have suspicions that Kraft knew far more about Spygate than he has acknowledged. Now, they don't have any evidence of it. They just have this feeling, this belief that he was complicit with this massive cheating scandal, and so they're holding that against him. The other thing that came up in my discussions with some of these voters is the 2019 charges against Kraft for his 2 visits to a Jupiter, Florida massage parlor. As one person said to me, I think we need to put some distance between the massage parlor in Florida and the Hall of Fame in Canton. So I think that hurt Kraft a couple of those years following that. And then the other issue is Stacey James, the PR chief of the Patriots. His campaign has left some voters feeling that he was too abrasive, getting increasingly frustrated with each passing year that Kraft wasn't in. Stacey James is quoted in my story on the record saying he believes that of all of the owners, including Jerry Jones, no owner has played a more influential role in the success of the NFL or deserves it more, obviously with his 6 Super Bowl trophies, than Robert Kraft. But some voters said to me that Stacey's sort of hard-charging style has also annoyed them, aggravated them, and that's also been a factor, I think, in why Kraft keeps coming up short.
Don Van Natta, ESPN, with us for another few minutes here on the Hoffman Show. I find, like, I understand the quote, and I think it's actually astute, that quote about the massage parlor and some distance, right? If the last headline about Robert Kraft is those charges and whatever did or didn't go down at that massage parlor, and then next thing is the Hall of Fame, that's not a great look for the NFL, as if, there's nothing but great looks around the NFL on all those related things, but we don't have enough time for that right now, Don. But I do think it's kind of, like, you almost have to laugh at the fact that around that same time, Jerry Jones is going into the Hall of Fame. And there's so many other people that have all these off-the-field issues of all different varieties. And you certainly know Jones's as well as any, as you're working on a book on it, and that is coming out soon. So where is the line for most of these voters, or is there a huge variance in the line for most of these voters in terms of what they will allow in the Hall of Fame and what they won't?
It's really, it's such a good question, Craig. It's one of the things as I was doing the story that I kept running up against. Like, what is the standard? And every voter has his own standard. And, some lean into these personal character issues in a way that other voters say they really shouldn't. Peter King, for instance, the legendary, just retired, he was a long time at Sports Illustrated, then NBC Sports. He's a friend of mine. He's quoted in the story. He's a big supporter of Robert Kraft to get in the Hall of Fame, has been arguing tirelessly on his behalf for years. He says that this stuff shouldn't matter. The massage parlor charges, for instance. He says that Kraft should simply be judged on his team's performance and his own performance as an influential owner. But, your point about Jerry Jones, there's a rivalry between Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones, one that I'm going to delve into in my book. And when Jerry Jones got into the Hall of Fame in 2017, this was already 5 years into Robert Kraft's campaign to get in. So Jerry Jones beat him in. And Kraft told a confidant when that happened about Jerry, he said, Jones hasn't been to the NFC title game in 2 decades, and he gets in? How does that work? So Kraft was annoyed by that. And you look at Eddie DeBartolo, he got into the Hall of Fame a year before Jerry Jones, the former San Francisco 49ers owner. He lost his team in 2000 because of DeBartolo's connection to an extortion case. So these facts, also annoy and aggravate the Kraft supporters that I talk with. They're like, look at these other guys. Look at their backgrounds. Look at their histories. And it's not fair how Kraft is being judged. And so, delve into all of it in the story that's on ESPN.com. And, but I want to emphasize, I believe, after all the reporting I've done, there's no question Kraft deserves it if you really just look at his credentials and look at everything he's accomplished as owner of the Patriots. And again, it's a little bit of a confounding mystery why he hasn't got in. But I do believe in the next year or two we'll see Kraft finally, get into camp.
Yeah, that was going to be my final question. And I agree with you. Like, of all the owners of the last, let's say, 25, 30 years in the NFL, I don't know that there's anyone that has a better case for both on and off-field or on-field success, off-field contributions than Kraft. But, Don, if you could quickly, for the audience, obviously, from a merit standpoint, we've laid out why both of us actually agree that Kraft should get in, but that structural piece is changing as well, according to your story and what's been reported. Why is it now much more likely that Kraft can get in than at any point previously that this was a discussion?
Right. So in the last 6 or 7 years, there was a committee of varying numbers of people, as few as 5, as many as 12, that considered coaches and contributors at the same time. So Kraft was in the contributors category, and he was going up against coaches. And so Don Coryell, the Air Coryell, legendary coach of the Chargers, got in. Tom Flores got in. Mike Holmgren and Mike Shanahan are leading candidates to get in this go-around. But now the Hall has changed the rules. They've separated the coaches and contributors committee. So now there's only a committee of 9 voters that is going to decide contributors. Kraft is the prohibitive favorite with that committee. I did some reporting there. I talked to a couple of voters that were briefed on the membership, and they say a majority of the 9 voters that are on that committee are Kraft supporters. So finally, Kraft will get out of committee, because he had not been out of committee, Craig, before when it was coaches and contributors. But now he will very likely get out of committee after they meet in early October. The full 50 voters will vote for Kraft for the first time in January. He needs 80%. He needs 40 of the 50 to vote him into Canton. And so the people I talked to believe this is Kraft's best shot, and that he very likely will get in, and we'll hear about it, around the playoffs time of this NFL season.
Don Van Natta, full piece on ESPN.com. Definitely worth a read. Not only does Don, he's so great with us here on the radio, but there's so many great nuggets in the stories. You got to go check out the writing in full. Great to hear your voice, my friend. Hope to see you in person at some point at some NFL thing soon. And until then, be well.
Well, I will be up in Washington this fall, Craig, so I look forward to seeing you when I make a visit up there. In the next month or so. We'll do it. So I'll see you soon, my friend.
That sounds great. Look forward to it. Don Van Natta, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we'll wrap things up, and then, it's not my responsibility anymore. It'll be BetMGM tonight, and then the Mystics have a huge game tonight, so we'll get you ready for that as well here on the Team 980. here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, and if you're watching, yes, I am in a hotel room. I'm in Indianapolis because we came to see our friend play basketball. The Aces and the Fever play twice in the next 3 days, so I'm headed as soon as we're done. Ant, I'm gonna hit stop on the old stream. You're gonna hit stop on the old radio show, and we're gonna walk out the door of our hotel, and we're gonna take a couple turns, and we're gonna be at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, and we're gonna go see Caitlin Clark and the Fever take on the Aces playing basketball.
Oh, you're right downtown.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Is he coming tonight, or is he going Friday? Did you ever hear back from him?
I haven't checked my messages. I've been so booked and busy.
You have. Anthony Haney has worked harder today than perhaps any other day in the history of the show. Am I wrong?
Nah. Today was a day for sure. Today was a day, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. We made it through the show.
We've made it,
and that's all that matters.
We're here at the bitter end. I almost missed part of a segment. I did miss part of a segment, which was actually low-key Anthony's favorite part of the show, I think.
It really was. Yep.
Just didn't get back to my computer in time. Is actually, Anthony, that your favorite part of the show today?
Yes, it is. Would you like to hear how it started?
I would like to hear the part that I missed, to be honest.
All right, here we go. All right, guys, welcome back to the Hoffman Show. It is super producer Anthony Haney taking over for a little bit. Craig is currently using the bathroom.
Thanks, Anthony, for telling me my business.
Yes, we have to talk about Competition Wednesday. That is what we must do. Last week, Craig and I picked out 3 games, and I end up being the loser in this situation, and that may not surprise a lot of you guys, but typically that is what happens when we pick these games. I end up on the short end of the stick, so that means I now have to do one of the 6 or 7 punishments that we agreed on last week, and I'm waiting on Craig right now because Matthew Essick, he did suggest a few things that I have added to the list, but Craig hasn't necessarily. Hey, Craig, there he is.
Good job, man.
Thank you. Hey, look, I did my best.
Yeah, no, hey, look, we had a flight delay. It was a race to get on the air a bit today, and your boy had to take a leak since he had been in the air, and it had been about 2 hours since I'd been in the air. So I didn't get back in time. I asked for 60 extra seconds, and I got the text back that said, "We're back already," which is the worst text you can get in the middle of your own radio show. So that was at 4:45. If you want to rewind and listen to how the rest of the segment sounded. But if you missed any part of the good old information that we gave you on the show today, you can check out the Hoffman Show podcast at your convenience. Just search the Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. Anthony, do we have time for, and do we have any real things?
Yes, we have time for one.
Let's go.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Set into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, what do we got?
All right, we have.
Now we don't have time. We have 45 seconds.
Yeah, we literally have 40. And both of these are, one is 50 and one is 40 seconds. So we would have ran out of time. But tomorrow, Kevin Durant, he tells a story. There's a viral picture of him with his hands up on a slide. And he tells us the story of how that was captured, because that's not really what happened. That was funny. And then Josh Hart, he is struggling on the EA Sports College Football 25. And he just doesn't know necessarily what to do. So it's a funny story.
Tomorrow, real thing, we got some bangers. Okay, well, we'll have to do those tomorrow because we don't have any more show left today. See you tomorrow.